Hola a todos, bienvenidos a Sube a mi nube una semana más. Hoy nos hemos desplazado de nuevo, hemos salido del plató, sabéis que de vez en cuando nos gusta, para venir a conocer a toda una experta, una futuróloga en el mundo de las tecnologías. En British Telecom estamos, nada menos. Bienvenida, Nicola Millard. How are you, Nicola?
I'm very well, how are you?
Fine, thanks. Very happy for having you here.
It's a pleasure.
Nicola, I want to ask you first of all about your work. I can imagine it's not easy at all trying to predict the future in such a complicated area like technology, universe. How do you do it?
So I have a crystal ball. It doesn't work, unfortunately, so no, I do have to work slightly harder for my living than reading tea leaves or looking at crystal balls. So I have a really fun job, but it is based around data. So I don't do predictions as such, I look at trends, and obviously to do that you need to get a lot of data. Now, I don't need a crystal ball because I'm actually based at BT's main research and development facility in the UK, that's called Adastral Park. There's about 3,500 very clever people there that I actually rely on in order to actually get that data. We also work with a lot of really clever people at places like Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Boston. They're the real futurologists, to be honest, so they are inventing some very mad technologies. But we also work with Cambridge University, which is just down the road for me, to actually work with them to get the data to try and look at trends and then try and understand the implications of those trends, certainly on big businesses. So I work a lot with retailers, with banks, trying to understand how this behaviour, because we're doing weird things as customers now, how does this behaviour change the way that we shop, the way that we bank, the way that we work, the way that we play.
Who is the autonomous customer that you recently named in your latest articles, and how does he behave?
So autonomous customers, that's actually a piece of research that we've done over a number of years in BT. So actually 5 years we've been doing that. So that's great trends research. We can start to spot 5 years worth of trends. So autonomous customers, autonomous kind of implies that we're doing as customers a lot more ourselves. So digital technologies are allowing us to shop online, for example, do our banking through an app. So then there's an interesting change in the way that we then communicate with organisations. So when do we go into a bank branch or a shop, and why? What's the experience like? Why are we not necessarily doing everything in the digital space? So how are we blending physical and digital? So autonomous customers, although they do more themselves, they also want to interact with organisations maybe very differently in a physical store or branch, or if you actually pick up the phone if you have a problem, how do you then talk to a call centre? So that's really what autonomous customers, and why we're doing the research, is to try and understand the impact of the behaviours that we're seeing on large organisations.
And regarding millennials generation, how do we behave and how are we going to behave in the future?
Well, I think interestingly, obviously, the millennial generation tends to embrace technology a lot more. I always say the one thing that really changes behaviours are smartphones.
Sure.
So as soon as you have the power of the internet in the palm of your hand, that changes behaviours. So we can use multiple apps, but also if it's not on the app, we'll go on the website. And if the app and the website don't actually align, if there are contradictions, we'll maybe then ask people in store. We'll wave our phone at them and going, what's going on here? Or if we can find a bargain in store, we'll again challenge people. So we're getting a lot more choice than we've ever had before in terms of technologies, but also the things that technologies allow us to do. But we're also getting, I call it transparency, so you can't hide anymore. If someone's providing bad service, the likelihood is that either a friend will tell you or you'll find out on Twitter if something's going wrong. So we've got very different behaviours coming from these autonomous customers. They're not necessarily involving organisations all the time.
Okay, and about children, what do you think? Our digital natives, how are they going to be in the future? Because the impact of the digital revolution now, I suppose it will have consequences in the future.
Well, they won't have known life without the internet. I think that's an interesting thing. We've just done some interviews actually with 16-year-olds, but also 81-year-olds. So we went the whole age range. And of course, an 81-year-old can remember the time when you used to have to do your banking in a bank branch, and you had to do your shopping in a shop. You didn't have that choice. Whereas, of course, when we interview the 16-year-olds, you know, that they are naturally digital. Having said that, they still do use physical shops. They still value that physical stuff. So I think it's quite interesting to try and stereotype millennials to say that they only do digital. But actually they do like to talk to people as well. So they will go into a store, they will talk to shop assistants, but they will use a wide number of channels, probably more than older customers.
How do you see the future regarding that? Should we be concerned about what is happening now, this digital revolution, or are you positive?
I like to be positive, but there are always positives and negatives around the digital technology. Now, the first thing is this ability to always be connected. Is that a good or a bad thing? Well, in a lot of senses, it's a good thing. I'm always connected with my friends and my family. But does it also create pressures? We have this thing called FOMO, fear of missing out. Does that mean that we, at 2 in the morning, we feel the need to reach out, because frequently we sleep with these devices very close to us, we then start to look at them and engage. And actually, does that have really bad effects on sleep, for example? Are we getting enough sleep? Are we actually losing the ability to communicate one-to-one? Or do we feel compelled to always have, electronic conversations? There's all sorts of things that we're discussing into the future. I like to think of it as positive. Technology helps us, enhances us. It helps us do a lot more things. I can stay in touch constantly. But turning off is also a very important thing to do.
For sure. I wanted also to ask you about security, because many citizens are concerned about that. Big data, and companies own a lot of information of everybody almost. What do you think is going to happen in the future?
This is a particularly interesting one, and I think it's interesting when we look at things like the Internet of Things, which is one of the next big trends. So everything is connected together. Now, I'm a psychologist, so instantly I kind of go, well, does that mean my devices are now talking about me behind my back? And do I feel comfortable about that? So we're seeing this trend that I call the me-conomy coming along, also called the ecosystem, which is around, okay, if I share my data willingly with organizations, what do I get back? So it's almost like a new currency, a new type of money. If I give you my social media data, do I expect better service in return? If I share my location data, do I expect more personalized service? Can I jump queues so I don't need to queue, you know where I am? All of that kind of thing. I think there are opportunities to further personalized relationships, but it absolutely relies on us sharing our data. And to do that, there are security concerns. Where is my data? Is it safe? Are hackers going to get it? What are the privacy implications here? So we've got lots of discussions going into the future around we can do a lot of this with connected devices, but do we want to? Do we as people want to share that?
Exactly. Regarding the video format, what is going to happen? Because the video now is not the future, it's the present.
Oh, yeah.
And how is it going to evolve in the internet?
Well, certainly we're looking at video on a number of levels. So I think one of the more interesting ones is we're actually working with a startup company at the moment from Israel who are looking at personalizing video. So if you watch a video on YouTube, you see the same video regardless of who you are. Again, if we're looking at the me-conomy, if I give some information about myself, can I personalize that video? So even recognizing, am I male or female? You could change a video depending on whether you're male or female, based on preferences, typically of men versus women. So I can start to personalize the interaction a lot more. So I think the future of video could get very personal, but again, it relies on us sharing that data. And how personal does it get? Because at some point there's a creepy line that maybe we can cross, where it becomes too personal and we're going, they know too much about me. So I think video, it's going to become more immersive, so we've got lots of things around wearing displays, but it could become very much more personal to me.
Nicola, what do you love about your work? What is inspiring in what you do?
Well, it's one of the most fun jobs I've ever had. There are never 2 days that are the same. I travel the world, so I get to see the world with my job. I get to talk to lots of different companies, so it's never boring. I think that's the thing. It can be quite tiring, but it's never boring. No 2 days are ever the same.
Thank you so much for your time. I think it's been a very interesting interview, and I just want to ask you a last question to try to learn a little bit more about you.
Okay.
Tell me one place to travel, one device or digital tool that you love, and a song.
Okay, so the place to travel. I'm actually from a place in the UK called Bath. And I grew up there, and of course you don't realise how beautiful a place is until you move away. But Bath is a beautiful place. It's where natural hot springs come up, and there are Roman baths, and you can actually bathe in them. But it's also got this beautiful architecture. I recommend Bath. That's the place to go. In terms of a digital tool, it's quite interesting. I love radio and I travel a lot, so I actually use TuneIn Radio, the app, an awful lot, because if I'm feeling homesick on the other side of the world, sadly I can't listen to the BBC. So I love TuneIn Radio. It keeps me in contact with things that are going on in my country when I'm not in my country. And a song, do you know, I actually live in Ipswich now, which is on the other side of the UK to Bath, so that's where our main research and development headquarters is. And one of our most famous residents at the moment is a guy called Ed Sheeran. So I'm a huge fan of Ed. He used to play my local pub. So I think pretty much anything by Ed Sheeran, although I like Bloodstream. So if I had to choose a song, Bloodstream by Ed Sheeran.
I love Ed too. Thank you very much, Nicola. It's been a pleasure, and I hope we could meet very soon again.
Absolutely, thank you.
Y a todos vosotros, ya sabéis, cada semana os esperamos aquí en Sube a mi Nube. Adiós.